up, everybody? This is Case Study QB, and we are the Political Junkies. And I got my guest, Chuck Modi, is in the building. All right, I'm going to introduce him, but before we do that, let's go around the horn. David, how you doing, buddy?
Hi, I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here again. I'm excited to be with Chuck. Johnny, always good to see you. Case, thanks for continuing to bring me back.
Nah, no problem. Johnny, how you doing, my man?
What's up, Case? Yeah, David, I see you again. Great to see my brother Chuck in person here on air. And yeah, we'll have some good topics to talk about with Stop Cop City and the path toward abolition.
See, that's what I love to do. Bring people together. We networking, organizing online. They gave us this tool. They didn't know what they were doing when they gave us YouTube, right?
They do now.
They did not know.
I'm going to the guest of the hour and a half, my man Chuck Modi, who I met at a Reimagining Safety documentary here in New Jersey. It was put on by Renee and her organization. I thought it was a great opportunity to meet all my favorite leftists in person. Amani Oakley was there. Ole was there as well. Who else was there? And Chuck was there. I met him and I said, hey, I got to bring you on my show and talk about the latest at Cop City. So he's a justice journalist who's out in the streets. You always see him chatting up with people, and he also covered, and he's going to give us the latest on Cop City. How you doing, Chuck?
Case, great to be here. Great to see you last week. I mean, last week was great because all these folks I see on Twitter, I'm like, you're human. I'm seeing you. We're here. And that was a beautiful thing. You know what I mean? I'm seeing Johnny for the first time here, but it was great to see people together in the same space and having these conversations. So I really appreciate you extending that conversation. I got to give a shout out to Renee Johnston, who organized that, who put that together. It's not easy to put that together, and she did it very quickly. So it was an honor to be on that panel, and it's an honor to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. So first thing I want to go to, I know David was chatting right before the show, and something that I've been thinking about how to, unfortunately we've seen the failures of trying to infiltrate the Democrats from at the federal level, and it's not working out the way that we would have loved. But I was talking to you about some things going on locally, and I was like, this might be the better direction, at least to put some of our efforts in over there in Denver. And I might have to come out there, move to Denver and meet you out there the way they're changing up things over there. Go ahead, David. Tell us that story.
Yeah, no, I was telling Case earlier that I went down to the Rockies game, the baseball team last night. They were playing the Yankees, and there were more Yankees fans than there were Rockies fans, which was kind of funny. But I took the train because during the months of July and August, the state of Colorado has funded our regional transportation district to make sure that all of the fares on the buses and the trains all over the Denver metro region are completely free. And so it was just so nice to, like, one, it was nice to not have to pay anything, but it was also really interesting to hear so many people. I'm always eavesdropping in public to whatever people are saying, but like so many people were saying like, oh my gosh, it's so nice for the four of us to not have to pay $40 round trip, like $5 each way, to ride the train. Or, I'd much rather ride the train than spend $25 on parking downtown. And then like some other guy was just explaining to like his friend, like, yep, you just get on the train and sit down, and that's the zero fare for better air. And I was like, it's really that simple. And so it was really nice. Last year they did like 1 month. This year they're doing 2. I would love to see it be 12 months like yesterday. But I don't know. It was just really interesting. And I was like, I love like looking for like local programs like that. We also have a micro connector, which is basically like Uber and Lyft that the city actually owns and operates. And they will send out these vehicles. They're basically just like sedans, and pick people up through an app and take them to like the grocery store or to like the bus or the train station if they happen to be in like a food desert. And I was like, I think that these are such great examples that like when we're acting locally, we can have like a socialist impact or like a larger community impact. But like then Johnny and I, and then Johnny had added too, like imagine if we like basically blew this up and fueled it with federal funding too, which I think would be incredible.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about that could be done at the local level. Let me give a shout out to our chat real quick. Bad Cookies, what's going on? Mastermind Hour, what's going on? And We're a Pilgrim. PJ Hollyhorn is in the building. Yeah, so that's something that I've been thinking about lately. Like, what changes, what programs can we do at the local level? And I thought of like an Uber, but for the people, and it's free. And I thought about even how can we have food, farmers markets or like vegetable gardens locally. I think of all the parks that's in my area. I'm like, what if they allot like just a little portion of the grass, like that little area, nobody goes over there. You know, the baseball diamond is on this side. Why don't they just allot a little bit of that land to vegetable garden and being able to grow fruits and vegetables, and then you could give it free to whoever needs it. You know, these are some ideas that we could do locally.
Community gardens are pretty popular. They're
okay.
You know, they it's a matter of, like you said, getting the land. And then you have to have all the resources to actually build the boxes and, you know, do whatever you need to. You know, I suppose depending on where you're at, you could just till up the land if that's all it calls for. But there have to be people dedicated to do it. You know, I'm not a green thumber myself. I'd go push a shovel, but I'd need somebody kind of looking over my shoulder and saying, hey, you know, plant them this far apart and that deep and all that good stuff, because all that matters. But you're right. I mean, a lot of these on the local level can be instituted. Really, the problem is, I think, is that you find where they're needed more, the difficulty of doing it. If you're looking at an urban garden, well, then you have to build boxes and bring in dirt. If you're talking about a place like where I live in rural Minnesota, there's not a lot of people struggling to be fed. Right. In this small community where we have, like, there's plenty of places I can point that are public areas where you could box it off, just like you said, a football field size, and people could go. But that's kind of more because it's rural. It's kind of more like, oh, well, that's just like the farmer's market. Like, why would I do that? You know, and they're like, I'm just going to drive 15 minutes because it doesn't hit the people the same way as like what you're describing in more of an urban area where, you know, they have to go across town an hour on public transportation just to go to like a Walmart where they have a grocery store, because there's no local grocery stores or, you know, produce, you know, carriers where you can get fresh fruits and vegetables and things like that.
So is this community garden, is it free? Like you could just go there and get food, or does it cost money, or is it low cost?
Well, there's different types, of course. It's people, they put together these where, yes, you can come in and anybody who wants the food can come do it. They've done it in some urban areas specifically to help feed, you know, the homeless. Other places like here in Minnesota, you see there's plots of land, and I think it's a different type of community garden. I think you get a little square and you go and plant things.
Okay, gotcha. David.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One case, I think that this would like be really cool to like supplement the mutual aid political party that you've been working on, which makes sense why you like talking strategy, so you can kind of incorporate it into that. And then there's also a program here in Denver called an organization called Denver Community Fridges that has refrigerators all over the city in food deserts, and that are just stocked every single day. People can come and put in their own food for others to take, or you can just come and take it.
Food
like,
libraries.
No questions asked. Food libraries,
box,
exactly.
You know,
like the free library
they used to do with books. There, you can put a book, and it's a free people build them in little communities, and you can just walk in and take a book, and it's just a little, like, it's up on a pole, and it's a little box. They have those same things with food, little food libraries, and people will put their canned goods and stuff in there, and anybody who needs is, you know, I mean, it's supposed to be an honor system, but there's all kinds of things like that we could be implementing and doing to reduce the issues with homelessness and
Taylor Swift was here yesterday too, for the last couple of days, and I was like, there was this big news article here about, this is amazing. Taylor Swift is here and she's donating 75,000 meals to the community. Well, guess how many meals the food bank of the Rockies gives out in a single day? 180,000. So thanks, Taylor. That's helpful. But like, you also could have given a little bit more. So it's like, why is it that we are continuously like, We, the people who are already like bootstrapping it, are the ones who have to like do this when it's like, okay, all of these people who have the resources, like we have mechanisms in place to be able to like reallocate some of these resources.
Well,
we could do it.
You have to remember, it's because it's not necessary. People say food is a human right. They're wrong. I remember what I said last show. It's a necessity, and necessities trump rights. Okay, and if there's something such as food, water, shelter, housing, which are all human necessities, you can't live without those. You can live without the freedom of speech. There are people who go on what do you call it? Silent. They take a vow of silence, right? And they live for years without saying a word, but they still eat and they sleep and they live under, a nice roof, because those are necessities to live. Freedom of speech is a right. It's not a necessity, right? So understanding the difference between those things and realizing that the powers to be know what we need to survive. And we can also put healthcare in there as well. And I also put education in there, because you can't have a sustained society without a viable education system, right? But they're going to control the food. That's all big ag is. They've taken the food. Now they're taking the water, everything else. So that when that's why it all needs to be nationalized. Things like that should not be propped.
I totally agree. Like that, it should be part of like food, the natural commons. And I mean, I think the basic, because there's exotic food. There are foods that cost a lot more money, but we should be able to meet the basics. They used to have government cheese back in the day, or I don't know if it's still going on or whatever.
Oh yes, they did.
But like,
I have many blocks of that stuff.
Yeah. So
I want to
like
share
that.
a related anecdote that happened in 2020 on Black Lives Matter Plaza for about 2 months before the police tore all the tents down and eventually went after the food supporters. Nobody paid for any water. Nobody paid for any food, and very healthy food at that, I might add. Nobody paid for anything. And what they did, besides their violence, besides the police attacking food supporters, besides police attacking medics, is there started to become, besides mass arrest, red taping to death, what we would call red taping to death. So first they would come after people giving food. They would say, you can't do vending. And the food supporters say, we're not vending. We're giving it away for free. Your laws don't apply here. And then they started changing the rules. You can't have a canopy. Now you're going to be hot. You can no longer have a cooler. Each week the rule changed. Well, nobody wants hot water. And in a very militaristic way, they went after the medics and food supporters violently, literally sometimes taking their food and throwing it in the trash can, and then through red tape. And what we learned was there was something that was more off-putting than someone maybe breaking a window. It was not breaking a window. It was getting free coffee in the morning and free food, so that Starbucks down the road wasn't making the same business. And that was the real crime on Black Lives Matter Plaza, that Starbucks was losing business. They wish a window was broken and that happened. They did something much deeper than that. And that's when we saw all of the police repression who had the audacity to help people, help the unhoused, help the hungry, more than DC could do itself. And that was the real crime. And that's what the police repressed.
Wow. And I'm gonna go to Chuck so we can talk about Cop City in Atlanta shortly. But I want to bring in our other PJ. PJ Kimberly is in the building. What's going on? How you doing, buddy? Oh, I can't hear you, so I don't know if you have to. There we go. I can hear you now. How you doing? And
Hello.
I'll give a shout out real quick to the Love Always in the chat. You want to give us a little update? How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I guess I'm doing decent. I'm getting ready for DSA convention. But
okay. So I'm looking forward to hear about, when is that?
Gosh, I think it's the first week of August.
Okay, okay. Are they going to have anything online, or is there a website?
I think it's probably going to be live stream part of it.
Okay.
I know because it's happening in person, but
okay. Got you. Okay, so I'm going to go to some tweets that we have going on. Let me go ahead and bring that up. Present. And then we're going to go through some Twitter stuff. And then let me just give a shout out to my buddy David and Day, who couldn't make it today. But they have,
They couldn't be here.
Oh, did I switch that? Did I miss that? All right. David is here. They couldn't make it today, but check them out on their podcast, Call Me Limbo, which I just saw that you have July 14th. So
Friday. Yeah.
Yeah,
Friday.
you
So
just
we're going
got
every 2 weeks now.
Nice, a fresh one. So
every Friday, yeah.
Everybody, definitely check that out. Then let's go to some tweets here. Sorry, was not prepared for that. I'm clicking all the wrong buttons today. All right. So while I bring this up, we're going to be talking about some clips. They had Lawrence from Fox News. He had a horrible take on unions that I'm going to infuriate everybody. And then also we're going to talk about how the Freedom Caucus seems to be getting it done as far as holding up and making demands. They're currently holding up the defense bill and causing a lot of people in the media to be mad. But that's kind of what we wanted the Justice Democrats and progressives and to do with their power. We wanted them to force the vote. We wanted them to do various things. And, we all don't have to agree with exactly what their demand was, but to demand something, right? And unfortunately, that was not happening. So here we go. Finally got this up here. Bam. So here's one tweet that I thought was interesting. Think corporations can't afford a minimum wage or $15 an hour for the people? Here are what CEOs are making. And they're making $9,783 per year. Let me see if I can click on it and make it a little bit bigger. Chipotle, $17,459.
That's per hour.
Per hour. What I said per year? I'm sorry, per hour. And then Dunkin' Donuts, everyone can see here the insanity of how much people are making. And they said we're radical for wanting, I think the latest demand from Workers Strike Back is to change from fight for 15 to fight for 25. And then I was talking to Roger Meadows yesterday, and he was saying we should be asking for fight for 45, fight for 50, right? And people would say, oh, that's radical. What you mean somebody could make $50 an hour? But here we are, got CEOs making $9,000 an hour, $8,000 an hour, that McDonald's CEO. And I would say this is the radical. This is radical. All right, let's keep it moving. Share this. Here's another article that says it takes 300 workers' salary to equal the average CEO pay. This is something else that's super radical, and something that I would like to see regulated is the worker to boss ratio. So that could be worker to CEO, worker to whatever you want to call the person at the head of that organization. But I think that should be regulated, that it shouldn't be able to make more than maybe 20 times or something like that.
Oh, look, typical cooperative environments, you're not going to see more than two. Well, Mondragon, whatever, however you pronounce it, the elected administrators, meaning the members elect these people as their bosses, not really their bosses, but to serve in those administrative oversight roles. They only make 8 times more than the lowest paid employee. Okay. And so that means there's an 8-tier to that. Most co-ops, worker co-ops, you're not going to see more than a twice or anything like that. So to even say 20 times is outlandish.
Okay, so this is interesting. You said more than twice. You wouldn't be able to make more than twice the average worker.
Why would you? Are you twice the person? Are you going to put twice the amount of time in? You actually in a real cooperative environment, you would get compensated for the time you put in and the onerousness of your task. So the harder your task is, like shoveling a ditch, the more you would get paid for that task. And also in a post-capitalist world, you have to envision that the jobs nobody wants to do would be the jobs we all share, right? Okay. So if nobody wants to take out the trash, then the everybody in the office has to take out the trash, and they go, I mean, however you do it. But if somebody says, look, I'm willing to take out the trash so nobody else has to, but I want to do it, I think I should get compensated more because nobody else wants to do it. Well, then that's fair to say,
that's fair.
Look, I'm willing to pitch in $1 you're willing to pitch in a buck. Everybody pitches in a little extra buck, and this person makes a little bit more for doing work nobody wants to touch. Otherwise, we all take on roles that we appreciate, that we like, that we're good at. And then we share, like I said, we share the work that nobody wants to do. But when we talked about a worker co-op in the taking over Amazon, for instance,
okay,
I think that the people that would work the remote positions like me, that was, doing operational things, working at a computer, would make less than the people working in the warehouse actually filling the trucks up, and the drivers who are delivering the packages. They should make more than me in that position, even though I may have what you might consider a director's role or an administrative role. I'm just looking at a bigger picture. That doesn't mean that I'm doing harder work, right?
Yeah.
So
totally go.
Yeah, Day and I've talked about this on the podcast too, about these kind of roles that are quote unquote undesirable. I'm like, why don't we have some form of national service, whether it's for like 1 or 2 years, and then it's us giving back to the country that hasn't given us a whole lot, but maybe it could.
Yeah. So something like the Job Corps, is it something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like AmeriCorps, Peace Corps. But I don't think that they should have to live in poverty. Like, I don't think that they should have to take a vow of poverty to have to do these programs.
Gotcha, 100%. I want to play this video. Let me know if you can hear. Can you hear the sound?
Dear Waffle House management, we, the undersigned workers at Waffle House, are standing together to demand that we are provided with a safe and healthy work environment where we can adequately provide for ourselves and our families.
Waffle House workers in South Carolina went on strike this week, demanding better safety, pay, and working conditions. Workers at the store say they regularly experience unsafe and violent situations. And this isn't an isolated incident. Many service workers say their bosses are putting them in harm's way, according to recent surveys by the Strategic Organizing Center.
I was working 17-hour shifts back to back. This ended up leaving a toll on me and taking me to the ER. I ended up with a kidney infection, and it was so serious to the point that I ended up on morphine.
This strike is following a wave of service workers organizing in the South, supported by the Union of Southern Service Workers. Members of the union are ready to build worker power and take the fight back to the bosses.
It's important for us to stand up and deliver demand letters and take action together, because without us, these corporations can't run. Waffle House can't run if all of us walk out. We can't let corporations and bosses take us apart.
You're no good. Treat your workers like you should.
Yeah. What you think about that video, David?
Yeah, I was watching another video about the Waffle House workers advocating for better conditions. And one of the employees was talking about how a customer went out to their car to grab a gun over some $3 hash browns. And so I was like, my gosh, like what these workers are asking for around a reasonable wage, scheduled, like regularly scheduled shifts, or like to know their shifts or to not be called in when on their days off. And they were asking for some extra security that they generally only have like on the weekends from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. Like, come on. Like, I was thinking about this the other day too at the grocery store with like automated checkout. Like, this elimination of more people working is creating unsafe environments for the people who are, because there are so few of them to protect themselves, because the company is just further extracting profits out of the people who are doing the labor.
You're muted, Case.
I apologize. Kimberly, what you think about this video on this topic, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, it's sad hearing that young girl get a kidney infection. I mean, she's so young.
Crazy.
What in the world? You know, I would just say, you know, I definitely understand why they feel unsafe. Waffle houses tend to be in some gangster ass spots. And, you know, all types of dangerous people really be showing up to this Waffle House situation. And I guess I would also like to say on the point of, you know, people feeling like 30 or 40, 50 bucks an hour is too much money for like the average worker to make. Ask that person what kind of money it takes to raise a family. right?
Mm-hmm.
What will they say? You need at least $30 an hour. Funny, you realize how much it takes to raise a family in America, but you also think that that shouldn't be the average wage.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think I was talking to Roger, and he was saying we should calculate what the living wage should be. Calculating food, housing, etc., light, electricity, water bill, and then calculate 30% on top of that, and that should be the living wage. Now I say 30%, but I think we need to talk to economists who can really dig into the details and get what that percentage should be, so that the economy's thriving. When you have that extra money that you can spend, you're then pouring into the economy. So finally, we're gonna give the Twitter a little break and go to our guest, Chuck Modi, who is our justice journalist, who's going to talk about Cop City and give us his perspective and what's going on over there in Atlanta.
Well, listen, thanks for having me. And I got to segue with Waffle House for a second, because Waffle House is one of the Atlanta Police Foundation's corporate backers, along with JP Morgan Chase, along with Wells Fargo, Amazon, Chick-fil-A, Delta, the Home Depot, Atlanta Hawks, and so forth. It's a lot, $60 million of private money, which is behind this incredible $90 million facility that they want to tear a forest down in Atlanta to build a cop city to repress the type of protests that we saw post George Floyd, that we saw post Rayshard Brooks. And this fight has been going on for a couple of years now. Yeah. It is a climate justice fight. It is a racial justice fight. It is a you don't want privatized policing fight, which will create domino effect that will happen in every single city. So it is a national fight. And really what I learned being there a couple of weeks ago, it's an international fight as well. And I think maybe 3 events that people really need to know about, if they don't already know about, that woke me up, because I'm late. Anyone who came in this year is late to Stop Cop City. Is that the protesters there have been fighting multiple layers, but one protester, Tortuguita, was murdered with 57 shots and was executed in January by police. And the autopsy reports show there's no soot on his hands. So we're going to really look at the police report and see that does not look right at all. Shocker. We also know 42 protesters were given domestic terror charges, which is draconian. And in the police report, the cause was things like having mud on your shoes, wearing black. People were gathered up and kettled in a field and given these wild charges. And then the third major component that we saw of Gestapo-like oppression is there were bail supporters, lawyers who helped get people out of jail, who were attacked through a SWAT raid you might have seen on TV.
Yeah.
That was ridiculous. And when you take those 3 together, we've seen the very type of repression and oppression that the protesters are fighting against to build a $90 million facility to do more of that. So that's what's sort of going on in Atlanta in the larger context. But I was lucky enough to be there for a week, a couple of weeks ago, to learn a lot more with what's happening more recently.
Wow. Thanks for that update. So let me ask you this question. When you got there and you went to the location, first of all, from the city of Atlanta and driving to the location, how far is it? Like 20 minutes away, 30 minutes away, an hour away? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think it's, generally Atlanta, you're 20 minutes away from downtown in general. So where the forest is at, where there was a week of action. I came for a week of action. I got to meet some incredible independent journalists down there. Atlanta Press Collective has been doing incredible work. Scalawag magazine doing incredible work. Micah Hirschkind recently wrote a piece that I really recommend, which is a primer on everything that's happened in Stop Cop City. So I'm learning from some of the local reporters out there. And they've been giving you the truth, and you're not going to get it through the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Let me tell you that right now.
Have you come across any protesters who are getting active because of this one situation, like they weren't active before? Because I know I saw when the city council of Atlanta right before they voted, they had like the longest, I think it was like a 3 hour, or a whole bunch of people were there to speak about their opposition to Cop City. And then at the end, like only one person voted against it. And but while the people were talking, they talked about how they never got active. So I'm just curious, have you seen anybody who's getting active for this purpose?
Oh, absolutely. People are getting active on so many different levels. I mean, there have been the hardcore forest defenders who've been there 2 years, but the more people learn, the more active. Even myself, who focuses on Washington, D.C., I've come to the conclusion that is the epicenter of the fight against police terror. Atlanta, they're doing it. That if you want to know where George Floyd evolved to, those mass uprising, it's in Atlanta. They're still doing it, and they're being very proactive about it in a way to stop the next George Floyd, to stop recreating more Derek Chauvin. And that date that you're talking about, which is June 5th, that was the first of 2 times I went down in June.
Okay.
And it was very important because there's a multitude of strategies, and no strategy is left unturned. And that includes trying every avenue democratically. That there were 17 hours of testimony overwhelmingly against Cop City, overwhelmingly against Cop City, that went to 5 a.m. And you might say, what does that matter if the city council voted 11-4 against it? And what does that matter if everyone knew the paid off city council would vote against it? Well, it matters because it challenged the narrative that the people of Atlanta were for it. So they destroyed this narrative. I welcome anyone to go online to YouTube and look at some of those testimonies. Incredible, over 17 hours. So you don't get to lie too. And that we're going to expose your lies when you say the people of Atlanta want this Cop City, when that is absolutely not the case.
Johnny got a question for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the point right there. Is right. Well, it's perfect that you segued into that, because the question that you hear a lot of uninformed, maybe mainstream media watchers is, you want the cops to be better trained, but you don't want to support building a training center. So talk about how this is not really centered around training and giving cops a better social skills or whatever, and it's really a militarization of the police force is what they're really doing with this Cop City.
Sure, great question. Capitalism is driving Cop City, not the need for more training. I believe the need for more training, and this is something I believe, by the way. When I was in Ferguson, I said silly things like that. I said we needed more black cops on the force, when I realized in Baltimore and D.C., black cops are perfectly capable of shooting tear gas if they get the order to shoot that tear gas, right? Or perfectly capable of joining the white cops in murdering Freddie Gray. And I had a bad analysis, and training was part of that analysis. And I couldn't be more wrong. And it doesn't take long to find that out. And I think the best case example of that is Derek Chauvin himself. Derek Chauvin was a field training officer. Derek Chauvin was selected to train others to put knees on necks for who knows how long. And that could tell you just how much this training idea is the wrong analysis. The right analysis is we need to stop funding a white supremacist structure. So the Derek Chauvin example, if we stay there for a minute, we know the 3 other cops were protecting Derek Chauvin. Where was their training? That was their training. Do you understand? Their training was to protect Derek Chauvin's knee. All right, what happens after that? What happens with the police report? Well, the police report initially, before Darnella Frazier took that video and took the most important video anyone could possibly take and probably suffering trauma from it. But before that happened, they said George Floyd died of medical injuries. That was their training. They're trained to say he died of medical injuries. What happened after that? The DA, Mike Freeman, did not arrest anyone. They're trained to protect each other. So it is very, very important to understand the institution we're talking about. Derek Chauvin isn't the problem. The problem is we have a system that protects Derek Chauvin and promotes Derek Chauvin. And that is not a system that you could give more money to. That is not a system that could be reformed. And the people in Atlanta understand that. And in stopping a Cop City, you're stopping more Derek Chauvins.
Yeah, 100%. I want to ask you. So we were talking about earlier, food deserts and basically different ways of mutual aid. I think the food library and stuff like that. What are some of the mutual aid that the organization is doing, the protesters are doing amongst themselves? One of them was the bailing people out that you mentioned earlier. But what other things are they doing to sustain the protest to keep it going?
It was amazing, and I see some of this on Black Lives Matter Plaza for a couple months. George Floyd, but the love there was amazing. I can't say enough. It's very hard to communicate love, but there's food distribution. Okay, so every Wednesday you can go. The bail supporters who were arrested, they're still doing their food distribution. That's what they're doing. They weren't just helping with bail. If you go at this point, it was in the Brownwood Forest because the Weelaunee Forest has been cut off by police. There's a line, you can't go in there anymore. So the week of action was in the Brownwood Forest, and everybody was taking care of each other. You went there was lunch every day. There was in the morning, there was breakfast every day. People were the sense of love and community was incredible. And if you talk to the mother of Tortuguita, who was there every single day.
Oh, wow.
She says, I lost Tortuguita, but I gained hundreds of family members.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And that's deep. I mean, I almost want to cry when I heard her say that a couple times. That, there's nothing that could, fill that void. But as close to filling a void as possible, the love that she is receiving from so many people, it's as close you can get to that.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. That goes to show where her son's activism and love for the people comes from. It came from the mom who expressed that. Because I know I can't even imagine what she's going through to lose your son from basically that type of situation. Like I had a brother that passed away in a car accident, but it was no fault of getting killed by a cop or anything like that. So I could imagine that's a very traumatic moment. So before we move on, does anybody else have any questions? And anyone in the chat have any questions for Chuck? I would love to ask him. Let me give a shout out to the Gemon came up in the building. Let me see who else. Gamer for Life is in the building. Much love to you all. And so I want to correct and say they for the protester that it's sad that they passed away through the police shooting them, and it's pretty obvious that it seems to be a cover up in that situation because, like you said, that they didn't find any gun residue on him. So that's absolutely crazy. All right. So if no one has any question for my man, and is there any last words on this, Chuck?
Actually, I've got a question.
Let me go to David. Yeah.
So I was gonna say. So I was traveling last weekend, and I flew, and I saw for the first time in person the TSA facial recognition stuff that they want people to go through. I opted out because you can. So people who don't know that, you can request and not do it. But I'd be curious, like, if you heard about some of Chuck, if you heard about some of the specific types of like policing, domestic terrorizing, if you will, tactics that some of the police departments or that they would be using at this training center or that they would be teaching.
Yeah, well, I've also already heard that Atlanta already is one of the most surveilled city as far as cameras, not just in the country, but in the world. I've heard that a few times. The tactics that are being talked about in Cop City are militarized tactics, are tactics to repress protests, are international tactics. So it's very important to understand that, Atlanta already has a Ghillie program where police from Israel will come and there's an exchange back to Israel. And it's known in America, like the deadly exchange that is often talked about, where United States police go there and other countries and come back and learn how to treat Americans the way Palestinians are treated with warfare. And what this will do is expand that. And why do private corporations want to be behind that? Private corporations, this is an export. We're exporting violence, very much like the military, but the chickens have come home to roost. And that's going to happen all over America, and that exchange is going to happen globally. And it's very important to understand that connection, which I didn't understand until a few weeks ago as I interviewed more and more people. And the last thing I just want to say is that at the same time this was happening, and Tortuguita, who was executed with 57 shots, the mother of Jamarian Robinson in Atlanta was also having a hearing. And Jamarian Robinson was shot by Atlanta police and federal police 76 times, shot at 110 times, executed. And the parallels between Tortuguita and Jamarian Robinson are incredible. And what is unknown even to a lot of protesters in Atlanta is that the hearing that happened the week before the week of action will determine if these federal cops get immunity. So I sat in the hearing. I think it'll actually go the family's way because of an incredible witness that contradicted scientifically the evidence the police said. If that goes that way, that case will be case law and affect Tortuguita, affect Jimmy Atchison, and affect many families in Atlanta, in Georgia, in Florida, and Alabama, 3 states in the 11th district. So some of the executions that have happened prior to Tortuguita will influence that. And I think these connections are being made, and it's very important to make these connections. And people have been getting executed in Atlanta for quite some time.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. You hear about the different times that police will have these shootings, and you hear about the person getting shot 50 times, like Chuck just said, 50 times, 70 times. There's so many different situations like this, and one of the reasons I heard that this can happen is that when a police shooting happens, and let's say you're a cop and you were like, okay, you just shot once, or maybe you didn't shoot at all in that scenario. Afterwards, the cop or the superintendent or whoever's your captain is going to come and say, hey, everybody else was shooting. Why didn't you shoot? Because they have to have a unison or united front in justifying why everyone has to have a certain amount of bullets out of their chamber so that they can justify what was done. And I'm like, wow, so that's how systemically something like this can happen. If they feel like they have to be forced or to shoot their gun, otherwise they're going to get in trouble. You know, that's how we can see something like that happen.
That is most certainly the case. But I want to add something. I want someone to do a study on race and number of shots. I want to see that study.
That's a good
over
question.
and over, when I study number of shots, when it gets into 40, again 50 and 60, it's almost always a black person. And if it's almost always a black person, there's something else is going on here. Yeah. Something else that the execution that'll make that trigger keep going on and on and on is because black skin is seen as a threat in and of itself, not a gun. So I'd like to see someone really quantify that and show that to what I think we believe already, but put that in numbers. So there's something else happening here.
Nah, totally. I mean, we've seen the videos of, you see a white person yelling at the police, doing things that, you know, if they were black, they would get beat up, shot at right away. And I remember seeing a video one time where the guy actually took the cop car away from the cop and left with his cop car. You know, so it's definitely, I would love to see that study as well, Chuck, where you see the disparity between the different color lines and how they might, I don't know if they have a fear of, oh, if I do something to this white person that maybe I won't get off, or maybe they see themselves, you know, a son or a family member where they would have a little bit more empathy for them.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you, Chuck, so much for coming on the show and giving us that latest update. I'm going to move on to that clip that I was telling you all about that is probably going to make everybody mad. Let's see if I'm right about that.
I say this with love. I have friends and family members that are part of the industry, and I get their grievance of wanting more money. But I can't escape the tribal nature of Hollywood. They don't look at themselves as individuals. So they're not willing to individually negotiate their contracts based on their worth and what they're providing to the table. They're asking for all of them to be on the same playing field when they're not doing the same amount of work or have the same fan base. And I think that's what is going to destroy them at the end of the day. Because mark my words, the big boys in this industry are eventually going to leave the union, and they're going to go and do their own thing, and they're going to be taken care of. And it's going to be the little guys who they've asked to be a part of this whole movement that aren't going to have the jobs. I mean, let me tell you something else. There's a lot of other young actors and no-name actors that just haven't gotten the shot yet that are willing to do the job. So, again, I say it with love. I don't think this is going to go well for them.
So the scabs are coming. Quickly, Joe. Stephen Colbert.
Wow. So the scabs are coming. So this is a take where they're actually promoting, or he doesn't understand the concept of what a union is. He doesn't understand that if you're an individual, you're going to have less power. You're going to be able to be ignored, and you're not going to be taken seriously unless you come together with your fellow actors in this situation and say, hey, we are demanding a certain amount of percentage from the residuals. Let me go to you, Kimberly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if it's so much that he doesn't understand, because this is a clip that's this show is on Fox News, and, Fox News makes a lot of these dumb arguments, but someone out there is buying them, right? That's why they even put them out. So I'm not sure that guy even believes what he's saying as much as he knows somebody out there is going to believe it. And, this is an argument we've heard before. Oh, workers, you should all individually bargain on, your individual skills. And it's like, that's funny. I have to individually bargain on my individual skills. Meanwhile, you got a whole corporation, right? And a bunch of people working for the corporation to back you the hell up, along with billions of dollars. You're not doing it by yourself in your individualness, but you want me to go out there and fight a whole machine by myself. Because of course I'm guaranteed to lose. I also think it's interesting that he comes out and is like, these, big stars, you're just going to leave these poor peasants in the dark, and they're going to go out and leave the union whenever it's convenient for them. And it's like, well, to create a movie, you don't just need, a main character. There's a bunch of background characters and all these other people who are in the movie, to make it seem like this is happening in real life. So yeah, maybe whatever, a lot of these superstars, they still get to be in movies. If there's nobody in the background, how is that a movie?
Yeah, 100%. Go ahead, Johnny.
Yeah, she basically took my point. That is exactly what I was going to say. Is the people who they're not the big actors that we're worried about. Those people have millions of dollars. They're set for the rest of their lives. It's all these commercial actors and background actors and crew and other people that contribute to all of this being made. Sure, you can have Ben Affleck and whatever and like 5 big names, but they're all in an empty scene, right? There's nobody behind them at the restaurant. There's nobody else there. Like, sure, that's going to make for a really realistic movie. And so if you want the industry, because look, I'm a big movie buff, TV. My kid and I just started watching Breaking Bad, binging it, and then we realized we had to watch Better Call Saul, right? So now we're binging that to finish it up. And I like good shows, good entertainment. I mean, I'm a big comedy buff myself, and I have a great appreciation for that skill set in and of itself. But, there's nothing wrong with the circus as long as we're also getting the bread, and the problem is we're not getting the necessities that we have. And personally, I'm willing to give up the entertainment. I don't care that they're not making shows. Do what you need to do. This is one of the biggest things that could have happened, because this affects everybody. Everybody watches some shit. Right?
Yeah.
But everybody watches something. And it's going to affect everybody to the point that where they're at least going to get recognized. And I actually tweeted something about that today, is that most people don't realize something until, enough popular people make it popular. And if that's what it takes for this to start rolling, then so be it. But to think that the peasant workers are you're not going to get rid of all those extras and all those, what that guy considers low end, low skilled or not popular actors, because they're all necessary for the industry as a whole. But they should still, like anybody at Starbucks or McDonald's or anywhere, be able to pay their bills. And I saw one of them tweeted, that they couldn't even afford their health care, or they weren't eligible because they didn't make over 26,000, whatever it was, a year.
Wow.
So according to the rules of the union, they weren't eligible for their health care, which means what? Obviously, and this is another, I won't get into it, but the way unions have fought against Medicare for all really pisses me off, because I'm glad you got health care, but what happens when you lose your job and you're no longer part of the union, or in this case, you don't make enough?
Yep, 100%. Yeah, nah, totally. Go ahead, Chuck.
Yeah, I mean, as far as that Fox News guy, I think I'm in agreement with Kimberly. I don't think that he even believes that. He's there to do divide and conquer. We understand why he's there. Textbook, divide and conquer. Goodbye. Let's move on. You know who I like? If I had to pick any actor and say, you know what, who can play the head of a union? It would be Fran Drescher. It really would. I'm like, wow, this perfect role. And it's not necessarily a role. So, you know, come in there with that Queen's accent and go hard. It really works. But I'm very encouraged. And I say that with trepidation because I've been encouraged and let down too many times. But I'm encouraged of between the UPS and a lot of strikes that are going on. And the reason is that, you know, behind this Screen Actors Guild strike is AI. And that was mentioned a few times. And what AI is doing is something almost revolutionary versus all of our previous labor revolutions. And almost every revolution, whether it's agricultural, industrial, computers, it always takes away working class jobs. It always takes away physical labor jobs, a new machine, a new computer. But what AI is doing in unprecedented ways is taking away white collar jobs too. Doctors look out, actors look out, writers look out. It's hurt me, by the way, already in journalism. So it's taking away jobs across the board, across income levels, across white collar to blue collar. And what that might happen, in my dreams anyway, is that could create a class solidarity in ways we may not have seen in the past. That just the effect of that revolution didn't create in the past. So I'm hoping that happens. And through that happening, there could be more strength and more unity across all jobs and all lines.
Can I ask you in what way specifically that you're being affected by AI?
Oh, well, journalism, since ChatGPT came out, even I've written at Deadspin as recently as last year, and they've just announced even last week, they're doing ChatGPT. And all journalists, if there's anything that you need that is just reporting, straight reporting, well, all the journalist companies are using ChatGPT. They don't need that anymore. I mean, they're already laying off all bunch of seasoned writers, sports writers, political writers otherwise, and hiring a bunch of college kids to do these 300 words. They only care about the clicks, these private equity firms. So when you're a writer who writes in social justice and you write in a mainstream space, there's very limited times for you. So for years, I was blogging for free. And then comes 2014 post-Ferguson. And there's this space where, like, if profit motive and social justice align for a short period of time, then there's a space for you. And the second that no longer aligns is we don't need you. We were talking about Black Lives Matter. We could talk about racial justice. Now there's this anti-woke nonsense movement going on. We don't want to hear you anymore. So a lot of voices who are writing in social justice ways in mainstream spaces, but also independent spaces, those mainstream spaces are being pulled back. And, you know, I write in independent spaces too, but I'm not going to compromise any of my writing. If my writing aligns with your profit motive, then fine, spread it. If it doesn't, then I'm going to write independent. But what I'm not going to do is change my message. If I want to say free Palestine, I'm going to say free Palestine, period, or whatever. And I'm not going to worry about whether you like it or not.
I think about, and I'm gonna keep you up there because I got a question for you, Chuck. I think about how back in the day, and ironically, it was, I think, Walmart that made popular Made in America. Like, you know, it was a thing that you was proud to buy a product that was made in America. It's gonna become a thing probably made by humans. You know, this website has articles that's only made by humans, no ChatGPT or AI on this site, and that's how I'm going to know. Okay, Chuck Modi's on this website that's known for made by a human. I want to support him. I'll go to this site. Like, that seems to be the next thing coming up. But I know you're a sports writer, and I want to bring up this point that, you know, in basketball, you can see how their players union is so strong that they are able to get, I believe, at least up to either 50 or 51% of the profit goes to the players. I saw what's his name, Carmelo Anthony and LeBron a while back were advocating for the G League for them to get more money as well. And you could just see how they have so much strength in the NBA. When it comes to the NFL, from what I understand, is like they're doing what exactly Lawrence was talking about, where you get the people that's the most popular, where in the NFL is the quarterbacks or the people who make the most money, and they're at the front line. Like, they usually don't care about the other players, and that's why their players union is so weak. That's why people don't get a lot of guaranteed pay. A lot of the lower people, they really don't care. That's why a lot of times these players play for like 1 or 2 years, and they could be out the league with a bad injury. They don't even have to pay. But talk on that, Chuck.
Okay, I have a lot to say, but I'm going to start with the NBA. It didn't happen like that, just naturally. There's some stars, and I'm going to recommend a book by Teresa Runsletter, who came out last year. I interviewed her twice. I just love this book. It's called Blackball, and it's talking about the black athletes of the 70s. And one of the chapters focuses on Oscar Robertson, the great Oscar Robertson, who for whatever reason doesn't show up as athlete activist. But his career, post-playing career, was harmed, and he's been almost blacklisted because he's the main person who fought for those rights, who fought to have a union, who fought against the power. He's not the only one, but we hear of Kurt Flood a little bit in baseball. There's some others. He's in the pantheon of activists, but when you talk about union activists, you don't get credit. He gave up his post-career. So I have to do that. I want people to read that book, and you'll understand how the NBA got to where it is today. Secondly, on the NFL, you know, there are a lot more bigger forces. The NFL is also a lot greater than the NBA or anyone else. For people who don't know, if 80 of the top 100 shows in it last year, the highest ratings, were all NFL games. There's the NFL and there's everyone else. It's popular culture at its height. There's a reason the military has tributes and pays to have those tributes at NFL games. It's the reason they honor police and pay to honor police at those games. They pay the NFL. So the use of popular culture is incredible. And when we're talking about the NFL, you're right. I implore people, and they don't get it. So I really want people to get this. The average NFL player is more like us talking here than the millionaire. After you get past the 8 or 10 gazillionaires of each team, it's what you said. The average career is 2.5 years. You might make $900,000 a year. Half will go to taxes. So much goes to every family member you have. And you train your whole life for those 2.5 years. And then you're left with no skill afterwards because you've given every part of blood, sweat, and tears, and you have concussions, and you have injuries, and you don't have health care because the last collective bargaining agreement kicked off 400 people on disability. That's how ruthless the NFL is. And you don't have guaranteed contracts. You get injured, bye. So the sport that needs the most help, that needs the greatest health care, has the worst. And I would argue in many ways, NFL players, and I'm talking about the majority who make the minimum wage, are far more like us and sometimes worse, because if I get fired, I don't have a bad knee, or I don't have a concussion, and I could go on and continue work.
Yeah, 100%. I think UFC, you could put that sport in this category. I remember watching with my wife, American Gladiators. They have a documentary out recently, and they talked about how they get injured and how little pay that they were making. So this is just to show and to talk about how we need to come together. We need to have solidarity. And the more solidarity that we have throughout all the different industries and the different occupations we have, potentially a general strike, you know, if we could get that or something similar to that going, that's how we can withhold our labor and demand more. We can demand a Medicare for all. We can demand a raise in the minimum wage and these various things once we come together. And I think I'm very optimistic about how this summer, you know, you have UPS striking, you have the actors. First it was the writers, and then the actors join in. And then we have all these various Amazon. We have all these various big the train. Unfortunately, Biden, and we're going to start go back to politics and political strategy shortly. Biden prevented the train workers from striking, and that could have been a big force to see where we could go with that. But I'm still optimistic. Let me see, John. Go ahead, Johnny.
Well, I was just going to say that I want to mention this to everybody because I'm actually going to be working with a group coming up that's going to focus strictly on this. But when we talk about what we want out of these movements and these demands and everything, one thing I see that's not being pushed enough and that's sorely lacking is election and voting reforms that will bring about a fair and functioning democracy so we don't have to keep striking, protesting, and rioting. Hello. That needs to be number one. I'm sorry, folks. If you're on the left and you want Medicare for all and you want this, you want that, and it's not about federal politics like we were talking, state politics. We've got a lot done in Minnesota. I got to give the DFL a little credit. They gave school lunches, solidified women's rights or abortion rights. They've done some decent things, right? Because the whack jobs aren't in control. You can get a lot done in your local and state levels, but we still have a plurality system in Minnesota. So even though our elections are exemplary, I will go through this at a later time, as far as like same-day registration, all that good stuff, paper scannable ballots, we still have a plurality first past the post system. Yeah. So if a Green or independent runs in my district for Congress and they take 20,000 votes away, who are they taking it away from? And, Jesse Ventura won a plurality. He wasn't a fluke. He won with less votes than the majority. More people did not want him than wanted him. And I don't agree with, that strategy of the plurality outcome. So in our state, we need to focus on ranked choice outcome. We have it in the cities, blah, blah, blah. But when we talk about these movements, everybody, I don't care if it's Medicare for all, on top of Medicare for all, has to be those election reforms so that so that we can actually have people that are going to represent us. We know in the people that we've talked to, if we could get people like us elected, that believe in this stuff, then we would actually see the reforms take place. But we can't, because the capitalist system lets the, corporations and those who own them buy the politicians and put them in place and so on and so forth. So I just want people to know how important it is that election and voting reforms have to be at the top of these lists of demands. Otherwise, we're just spinning our wheels and we're going to have to keep doing it. 2 years later, we're going to have another protest and riot. 2 years later, it's another one,
No, definitely. And I just want to give a shout out to, before I go to Kimberly, old man Barker in the chat. Much love to you. And then I also want to say that I call ranked choice voting or star voting, whatever anyone wants to do, I call it a anti-billion, because, when we vote, we get bullied and say, oh, you're voting green, you're going to cause fascism. So ranked choice voting is an anti-billion bill. So Democrats should be, if they're against a billion, they should be for ranked choice voting. And then there's also an anti-fascist bill, because they always say that if you're going to vote for Green, the Green Party, you're going to allow fascism to come into America. Well, let's pass ranked choice voting and we won't have people bullying and we won't have fascism. Go ahead, Kimberly.
Shit.
Nah,
okay.
Gotcha.
Now. So yeah, I would like to agree with a lot of what Johnny said. The only thing I would say is we have to kind of be careful with ranked choice voting, because ranked choice voting has been passed in certain states, like New York. And, the DSA thought that they would do well now with this ranked choice voting system, and they did worse than, the elections before. And what we're starting to see is oftentimes, we hear ranked choice voting as a form of reform, but where's a lot of the money coming from for ranked choice voting? A lot of times it's these very big billionaires, basically these liberal billionaires. And what we're seeing is that ranked choice voting isn't really helping the left win elections. It's kind of solidifying the establishment's power. So a couple folks on the left are now starting to say that ranked choice voting needs to be passed with like a proportional amendment to it, which basically means you win the amount of seats that you get based on the proportion of the population that, voted for you. So even if whatever you win every race, technically, if your party only got 30% of the vote, then you would only win 30% of the seats, which, would be, it'd probably be the most fair system that we can come up with. But I just wanted to make that point that ranked choice voting is not the end be all. And in many states, it'll have the effect of bolstering the establishment, which is why we're seeing these liberal billionaires taking on this policy, because it sounds progressive, right? But at the end of the day, it's not going to hurt the party, not unless you pass ranked choice voting with a proportional amendment to it.
So that sounds like a parliamentary kind of system. Is that what we're talking about? Okay.
Basically,
Kinda?
a little bit more parliamentary, yeah.
Okay, interesting. All right, so we're gonna go on to the next clip, and let's talk some strategy. We got about 25 minutes to dig into it and talk some political strategy. So let me bring this up and bring this up into the stream. Bam.
Showcasing the power of the far right and the political calculations of Speaker Kevin McCarthy. The House today approved an $886 billion defense bill, but not before bowing to the demands of conservative hardliners and turning a typically bipartisan affair into a bitter partisan.
I just want to emphasize real quick, $800 billion, billion, almost $1 trillion, which is the next 10 countries. We have more than them combined. So I just want to throw that out there.
Feud.
This is an insult to all who serve.
The bill, which would set national security priorities and authorize pay raises for troops, was amended on the House floor to include a host of cultural issues. That's because hardliners threatened to block the bill, forcing the Speaker to allow votes on hot-button amendments, including to eliminate the Pentagon's post-roll policy, providing reimbursement for military personnel traveling to get an abortion, and to nix diversity programs at the Pentagon and health care for transgender veterans. Conservatives said the bill goes after the woke military.
What traditional East Tennesseans think about our military is a little different than what some of these bureaucrats and three-star generals think about it.
Just 4 Democrats voted for it, and 4 Republicans voted against the bill that passed on the narrowest of margins. The Speaker attacking Democrats.
So what they're doing is they're turning their backs on the military. That's wrong.
All right, so I want to stop this so that we could talk some strategy real quick, or some politics, right? So we saw that, let me go back to this screen here. 4 Democrats went ahead and voted for this all-Republican bill. And like Speaker said, that majority of the Republicans voted for it, but then they had these 4 that helped it pass. How much you want to bet that the Speaker negotiated with Hakeem Jeffries to get this done? Because usually the Democrats work together, all together, which is why the majority of them did not vote for this bill. But then Hakeem Jeffries said, you know what? All right, I'll give you 4 votes just so that we could pass this, because they have their defense bosses, or donors, I should say, that they want to make sure that this passes. So it's going to be interesting to see the end result. But the second thing I want to say, you see how it's the Speaker, instead of blaming the Republicans or the Freedom Caucus members, he went and blamed the Democrats. He say, oh, it's the Democrats that they don't want to pass this bill. All right, let's continue from here.
Voted against the bill that passed on the narrowest of margins. The Speaker attacking Democrats.
So what they're doing is they're turning their backs on the military. That's wrong.
Yet even some Republicans who backed the bill expressed frustration.
If we want to show America that we can come together and that we care about women, we got to stop being assholes to women.
I think it's a missed opportunity, but par for the course, given the national politics.
Democrats expect the Senate will strip out the controversial provisions, but that would mean McCarthy would have to compromise on a final deal, something that risks angering the far-right House Freedom Caucus, which has in the past paralyzed the House, and could call for a vote seeking McCarthy's ouster.
All right, let me take a break here because I want to go to David, and then I'm going to go to Kimberly next. But David, what you think about this?
Yeah, so quick story. Last night when I was at the Rockies game, in the middle of the game, like between like innings, there's this big announcement that says Raytheon Technologies would like to honor our veterans.
Wow.
I felt like I was in the Twilight Zone. And of course, I just went on this rant about we don't support them when they come home. And they made everybody stand. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, where are these messages coming from? Speaking of semantics, I also think that we should start talking about defense spending the same way we talk about social program spending. So why aren't we talking about the way that the Pentagon budget or the defense budget as $8 trillion over the course of 10 years, if I can do my math right. But like, it's crazy to me. Because I'm like, those are big numbers. But then when we talk about social program spending, I'm like, oh, it's $1.7 trillion over 10 years. Like it, and then when you break it down even further per like American cost for spending for so many of these programs, it's pennies. It's not even much. And so I was like, to me, it's a matter.
Oh, we lost you at it's a matter. You cut out.
To me, it's a matter of semantics.
Okay, thank you. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. And let me go to Kimberly next.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the fact that Hakeem Jeffries allowed these four to vote this way because oftentimes, you know, the myth that we get is, you know, there's always these 2 or 3 or 4 random Democrats who are just like acting on their own. But we know the way the party works and the way that they have treated the left, right? There's a party line and you need to adhere to that party line. So whenever you see a Democrat who's not adhering to the party line, that's because they've been given permission. Okay. It's never because that Democrat has just decided across the party that can spend $10 million against them next election. Please. Yeah. These people are I don't want to call them pragmatists. They're cowards, you know. They're afraid of the party. They're not going to cross the party just like that. And you know, you said it yourself, $800 billion, kind of close to $1 trillion. And the only thing I seen there was like what, a 4.6 wage increase. So we need to spend $1 trillion, right, to get soldiers. Oh, 4.6 wage increase while you're spending $1 trillion. Why don't you get them a 50% increase, right? Wage increase. If we really care about these soldiers, I think right now, if you sign up as a private, you know what you make? 30,000. If you're an officer, you make a bit more. You make 60 grand, but basically, in order to be an officer, you got to come in with a bachelor's degree. And let's not even talk about the healthcare system. You know, yes, there's some soldiers who get healthcare for the rest of their lives, but you got to battle to get that kind of healthcare because the military is looking for any reason to deny you the benefits that they'll tout when they're trying to recruit you.
Yeah. And we saw with Jon Stewart, he had to go and help for the burn pits get legislation passed so that they can get healthcare for that. It is absolutely crazy. Let me go to my man Chuck.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that it's the rotating villain, right? The rotating Democratic villain. They don't have just, you know, in the Senate, it's always Cinema and Manchin. And I think we understand if you're watching politics long enough, if it wasn't Cinema and Manchin, it would be 2 other people, right? There's always going to be somebody obstructing this situation. And I used to be, years ago, I was on that side. Oh, we just get 2 more senators, right? And we see this over and over. And more locally, you know, when we were talking about Stop Cop City earlier, well, where's the Warnock and Ossoff, who allegedly progressive senators who all of a sudden got real quiet, can't say anything about the repression that is going on in Atlanta? You know, who owns your tongue? So, I mean, we see this over and over, and this is like the easiest issue to jump on if you had any moral fiber in you. And so we have to recognize that. We have to call it what it is. And when we see this ridiculous military budget, we do have to keep hammering home the conversation where this money could go. That Flint has no water. Jackson has no water. East Palestine. We have to keep hammering that home, what is out of media consciousness.
Yeah, 100%. We definitely have to do that. We have to think about strategy. So let's strategize right here in real time before we end the show, right? What can be something that we do that can help push the narrative that we spend way too much money on defense? Because they, like like David just said, the defense industry has all the dollars in the world, just like Big Pharma, to give us advertisement, to pay for advertisements anywhere that they want to. And he saw it at the game for Raytheon, you know. So I wonder, does anybody have any idea at the grassroots level, how can we I'm thinking maybe just talking to our everyday neighbors or our family members, like, you know, we spend 800 billion. I don't think people know that we spend 800 billion on the military at that level. Let me go to Johnny. What you think, Johnny?
Okay, so I got a couple bad news, a little bit of bad news for you. People know how much we spend, and they don't care because they've been conditioned into this false patriotism that the country comes first, and the military. I'd have to look it up on Google to be precise, but it's only like 1% of the population, right? And it gets the biggest budget. Now, mind you, that's not tax dollars money. It's not your money coming out of your paycheck going to that to fund that. Those taxes are deleted upon receipt, and you shouldn't be taxed. The federal government pays for the military out of its appropriations. It creates new money for it, and we could still feed people and still spend that much. The problem is, what happens when that money reaches the Pentagon or those crooked people up in the military industrial complex? Is, as we see, $2 trillion goes missing twice. It just goes missing.
Yep.
Now, it's not your tax dollars, everybody. Just remember that. It's public money, but it's not your tax dollars. So it's not like they're stealing your money, but they're stealing public money. They're stealing all of our money, right? That we agreed to let it be created to fund this. So all of those VA hospitals, all of that treatment that all those people are, that all that money is meant to go help, it's just disappearing through accounting errors, guys. It's just, there's a few zeros and ones that get misplaced, and $2 trillion goes missing twice. So that's a big problem when you talk about how do we strategize, because even if we strategize, how do you fix that problem where the bloated money that's already going into it is being misappropriated and scabbed and stolen? And, the CIA, everybody's got their fingers in there. They all know where money comes from, and they all know where it goes immediately without guarantee and without checks and balances because of national security. You don't have to tell these people where those grenades and bombs are going specifically. You just sell them to some guy out of your van, I mean, it's probably that bad. How bad that you can imagine it is that literally how bad it must be for $2 trillion to go missing twice. And so to convince people that this is going on and that we have to divest from the 800 military bases around the world while Putin is, and China and everybody's trying to attack us. Like, how do you do that? They're so conditioned to be afraid. This country is number one in fear. We are so afraid of people that are just slightly a little darker than us, that will treat them with such indignity and disrespect that we don't even think that they have a right to be in our own neighborhood, right? That fear, that conditioning that's bred in this, in it's in other countries too, but primarily in this individualistic country, that we have to protect what we've got. We would rather fight it over there than have it come here, even though we have wars and things going on in our own cities, right? So from a strategic standpoint, I don't know how to really change that without first divesting from the military itself and showing people that we don't need 800 military bases around the world to be safe at home.
Unfortunately, we're having wars in a lot of places where people can't even point to it on a map. Like, that's how they can't relate. It's not only the color, but they just can't even fathom, like, oh, it's happening in Afghanistan. Oh, I don't even know where that is. And then the other point I want to make is the fact that the Department of Defense is the only department that hasn't been able to pass a full audit in like the last, I don't even know how many years, 7 years, or even, I'm sure it's even more than that, as I bring Chuck Modi on here.
So we talk about strategy. I don't know what we could extrapolate for Atlanta, but I want to throw it on the table. I'll let others decide what we can, because I was so impressed with their multi-pronged strategy. They had a diversity of tactics at play But even though, and there's a broad coalition, even though maybe you might have had some people who might have been against other tactics, they wouldn't condemn those tactics. So there's unity that there's a diversity of tactics. So you have many people going through the Democratic route, doing the testimony, no matter who they were. There are other people trying to get a referendum on the ballot for November to vote on Cop City and are getting obstacles at every sense. But nobody really believes that that is going to be a winner. It is being done to show the farce that is what some people in Atlanta believe is democracy. So it's more of a media strategy necessarily than an organizational strategy. Is to educate the public. I also saw canvassers every day during that week would go out into the community and educate people on what's really happening with the Atlanta police. And that's a tedious strategy. It's on the ground. Nobody likes
Chuck
it. It's not
froze.
sexy,
Is it just me?
but it
or
needs
did
to be
Chuck
done.
froze?
Right? And then you had a anti-corporate strategy. There was a protest against Home Depot, one of the APF funders. Let's tell everybody what Home Depot is doing and what they're supporting. And some of that wood that's going to rip down the forest, they're going to be benefiting from that wood. And there's so many layers to the corporate angle. So there's an education process that is going on and an anti-corporate process. And then finally, you're going to talk to anyone. They say, we're going to try every single quote unquote respectable means, knowing against the rigged system. And if that doesn't work, well, then this is what's next. By any means necessary, Cop City will not be built. Period. So if all of the respectable tactics do not work, we're not going to allow this fascist empire to be built here and just lie down. So there's a whole diversity of tactics, and it's respected across those tactics.
I'll just keep it going talking to you while he's probably figuring out a technical issue. But yeah, that sounds like the same kind of approach with war. There's so many facets to getting. I mean, look at the war protests of the 1970s. One of the biggest things, moving into the civil rights, after the civil rights movement and everything, that you would think it would catch on. People would evolve. People would say, guys, I'm telling you, when I was a child, I thought all this stuff was going to be gone by the time now I'm 50. I'm serious. I thought, okay, the 21st century, people are going to be waking up now. Oh, wow. The internet, people are going to be able to learn more. They're going to be able to communicate, connect. We're going to solve a majority of the world's issues. This is, I mean, people have to learn, right? That's what evolution is. We're going backwards. Idiocracy has become a reality. That was a documentary. It's not even a joke. We see it every day. So I'm really concerned. That doesn't mean I'm giving up and I'm not a nihilist. I'm going to be working for something. Election reform is something, like I said, we're going to be trying, but it's tough. It's tough to try to get through to people.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that capitalism adapts. That's the one thing that capitalism knows how to do, is it knows how to adapt. And even if it comes to actually killing someone, like we see how they killed our leaders, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and JFK. Like when you get to that leader that can potentially take us out of capitalism and reimagine a new society and economy, that's what happens. Let me go back to Johnny.
I was just going to say, may I say, it's not capitalism, it's oppression that adapts. Because before we had this form of market, we always had oppression of the weaker, the meeker, the people who don't want to fight. I don't want to fight, so you view me as weak and you try to bully me, and then I have to learn how to fight. And then before you know it, now I'm learning how to fight, and I'm mad because you're picking on me for no reason, and you're doing things to me that I don't deserve to have done to me, and now I want to fight you back. Right? That's the course of, and this has happened, all throughout society. Capitalism is just the latest iteration of what we're dealing with, and it's been the most successful globally, in modern times. But it's the oppression, the exploitation of those systems. Feudalism was oppressive, slavery was oppressive, all of those oppressive systems. And they know how to evolve, and it's all geared toward around the authoritarian power of those who hold the resources. They're the ones who hold the power, and it's always they don't want to let go. If it goes from kings to now we have the corporate lords, right? The same people, same families, passed down generation after generation, perpetuated that wealth. And there's a few new ones that they let into the club who are willing to play along. But it's generational wealth, generational power. So, yeah, we have our work cut out for us.
I didn't think about it that way, but that's a good point. I thought that, I definitely take note of your point that, we went from kings to feudalism, and then capitalism was actually a good system to take us away from that. But now we've outgrown capitalism and its usefulness to get to the next economic system. And we definitely have to do that. So much love to everybody in the chat. Thank you so much for coming to this show. And I want to definitely thank my man, Chuck Modi. I'm going to go around the horn one last time for everybody to say their last words. Let me go in order of on the screen. Let me go to you first, Johnny.
Well, hey, man, it was great seeing you, everybody, again. Nice seeing you, Chuck. Kimberly, I love hearing what you got to say. And David, say hi to Dave for me. And you guys know how to find me. Just my name on Twitter.
Yeah. My guest of the episode, and anytime there's an open invitation, anytime you want to jump on, just let me know. Hey, I want to come on the next show.
Yeah.
And you're welcome, buddy.
Well, I appreciate it. I really, really do. I'm humbled to be on here. I'm going to put my energy and my focus towards Atlanta in the next year, sometimes down there or from afar. That everyone's got to pick their lane. I feel that that's going to be my lane to assist from being outside. But the show is great. Great exchange. I'm going to think about it a little bit. Maybe I've been pushing ranked choice voting a little out of context, and I got to add more to it. But always looking to learn more as well as we fight. So I really appreciate all the exchanges.
Is there a place that we can support your work? How do we support you?
Yeah, I'm at Chuck Mo D1. I try to, what? I may have to go down that lane because I have a separate full-time job that I do, and I'm getting to a point where I may have to try another lane. So when that comes, I'll let you know. But for the most part, I all the work I do, I come out of my pocket.
Okay, much love to you, and thank you so much for your activism and your journalism. Is very helpful. I always see videos of you on the street doing the damn thing. Thank you so much, David.
If you want to set it up as a business or an LLC, I can help you with that. I do that during my regular day job.
May have to talk.
Happy to help. Few things. Carmelo got his NBA start in Denver, which is exciting. Yeah. Fun public libraries. The Black Panther Party gave out free breakfast. I've been learning about. I'm going to the mayor and city council inauguration tomorrow. So next time we chat, I will fill you in about that.
Oh, definitely.
Day says hi to everybody, and you can follow us on Call Me Limbo on your platform of choice. Case, thank you. It's always good to see you.
Show us that shirt. Show us that shirt, David. Eat the rich.
Hey, can I get a look too?
Yeah.
All right. Just so we know, since we're Jersey popping right now.
There we go. Stop Cop City. Love it. Love it. And then the last person, Kimberly, thank you so much for coming on, buddy. Appreciate you as usual, my fellow political junkie. Uh-oh, you turned it off and then you turned it back on. There we go.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, it was nice coming on. Thank you for having me on, as always.
Yeah. Yeah, much love to you. And much love to everybody in the chat. I'll just give a quick shout out. World Program, PJ Holly Horn was in the building. Old Man Barker and everybody, Mastermind, Bad Cookies. Much love to all y'all. And let me just give a shout out to my Patreon members. Here we are. Nancy Venture, Pedro Hernandez, Deborah B, PJ, Chris, Akiba Shakita, Zachary, Guston, Day, and David. Much love to y'all. Thank you so much. Y'all could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, politically strategizing, and I appreciate y'all. Much love to you. Have a great one. Adios. All right. And we are out.